Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all here on Zoom. My name is Chris Cahoon. I'm the Manager of Education and Public Engagement at Monterey Museum of Art. I'm so happy to be here today on behalf of the board and the staff of MMA to welcome you to the opening of Gretchen Andrew's Future News. Tonight's program is our way of keeping our doors open to the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the past few months, our staff has been busier than ever to transition our permanent collection, our rotating exhibitions, and our educational programming to an enhanced digital platform. You can meet artists, take part in a virtual art making workshop, or help your child stay engaged in the learning process, all through our improved site at montereyart.org, as well as Facebook and Instagram. In fact, coming up on Saturday is our virtual free family fun day, and be sure to check out our Mondays at the Museum, September 14th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where Gretchen will be talking with San Francisco photographer Stephanie Quintana about aspiration, Afrofuturism, fantasy, diversity, and other topics. So right now, I would like to introduce to you Corey Madden, who is our brand new interim director, and we'll go on over to Corey.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say a brief hello. Although I look like I'm in the galleries at the museum, I'm actually still in North Carolina, but I'm flying to Monterey on Monday and really looking forward to being a part of the team as the interim executive director. I just want to say how wonderful the staff has been, as well as the board, and what a wonderful museum you have. So I'm excited to see Gretchen's work, and I look forward to getting to know many of you.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, I'm done.
So for over 60 years, the museum has been a resource for tens of thousands of community members and visitors from around the world. And now more than ever, we believe that art can inspire hope. Visit us virtually to spark your curiosity in California art, past, present, and future, in all of its diversity. And now, the reason that you've all patiently sat through my rambling, it's a great pleasure to introduce Gretchen Andrew. Several months ago, former MMA director Stuart Chase handed me a newspaper printout in his office and told me about this artist he had had a chance meeting with at an LA bookstore and asked me to look into her work further. Since then, I have had the privilege of getting to know Gretchen and watching her work and career take off at such surprising speed. I can now look people in the eye and tell them with all sincerity, I knew Gretchen before she was famous. So she's been featured in Fortune magazine, Lala magazine, LA Times, Hyperallergic, Art News, or ArtNet News, and on Saturday we'll be taking over Fad Magazine's Instagram from right here in the museum. She is the first internet imperialist I've had the pleasure to meet, as well as the first Google hypnotist and search engine artist. As art reflects, critiques, interacts, and creates the culture of its time, Gretchen's work digs deep into the intersection of society and technology. She whimsically exposes the gaps and shortfalls in the AI and algorithms that we rely on daily for truth in a post-truth society, echoing the question once posited by a famous pilot who once asked, "What is truth?" In today's show, Gretchen reveals her aspirations for the future next president. Just as we officially begin election season, she also reveals her desire to be on the cover of Artforum. Or has she already achieved these dreams? So if you want to know the answer to those, Google it. Gretchen is a joy to get to work with you, and a delight to finally see your work up in the galleries. And of course, properly living in cyberspace as your work does. So I would toast you, but I forgot the bread. So instead, we will lift our glasses to give you a hearty congratulations. So if everybody would like to grab a glass.
Whoa.
Don't tell Bill.
But we having trouble recording it anyway, so. I didn't shake these ahead of time, although that would be a little bit more in character. But then again, I did carry them to the grocery store, so. The way I carry things.
Let's spray your paintings. There Yeah.
We're joined by very few people in the gallery here, as the museum is not presently, physically, in real life open, but the staff here has been, as Chris was saying, a total joy. And then we'll take these. I'll let that one sit. Very unprofessionally forward.
Everyone, toast. Congratulations.
Thank you for having me, everybody. So is it time to talk about the work?
Yeah. Now that I have sticky hands. So as we walk around the gallery, we'll try to speak up. If you can't hear what we're saying, let us know. And Allison, who's manning the camera right now, will let us give us the high sign to speak up.
Right, and also through the chat, Allison will look at questions. We'll definitely get to those at the end. And should Zoom fail, I do have Instagram Live going. I didn't announce that I was going to do that, but it's going, I think. And we'll be trying to move that around with this as well. So I guess maybe a good place to start would be with the title of the exhibition here. And Future News is definitely a play on fake news because, as Chris was explaining in his introduction, my work, as we'll get to know it on this tour here today, I make these vision boards, I make work on canvas, I make work with a tradition in painting and in drawing. But when you Google different things, when you search them on the internet, you'll see that my work comes up as the top search results. And so I call myself a search engine artist and internet imperialist, and you're seeing the physical aspects of my work, but you can Google cover of Artforum or the next American president and also see these works. So this exhibition is future news because the way I'm able to manipulate the internet is very similar to how fake news works, except for I exploit a nuance in human language that technology can't understand, which is that when anyone says what they want, the internet doesn't know how to parse desire, doesn't know how to separate you from your aspiration or you from your fear. And so I tell the internet, I want the next American president to care about this, and I want to be on the cover of Artforum. And that's how we get to future news, because it's not fake, it just hasn't happened yet. And as Chris was saying, this exhibition contains two primary projects, and maybe we'll go over here to talk about, actually, let's pivot more. Let's go all the way over here. You guys can see on the cameras, you can see the beautiful layout of this gallery museum. It's such a joy to be in physical space here and the permanent collections installed upstairs. And on Saturday, when I'm taking over FAD's Instagram, Chris is going to be upstairs with the permanent collection. We're going to be doing some back and forth about that. But anyway, so for those who don't know, Artforum is like the art magazine. Like it's the magazine of record, the most important fine art, contemporary art magazine in the world. And I made work, these vision boards as I call them, because they have visual resonances and conceptual resonances with those really like girly mood boards that you make when you like watch Oprah or do law of attraction visualizations. And this is clearly not a real cover of Artforum, it's an aspirational cover of Artforum. It may be a future cover of Artforum. And the work itself is all about things that I want in my future, along with this career moment of being on the cover of Artforum. As you can see, quite a bit of rosé champagne. And What's really exciting about this piece in particular is in the October-November issue of Artforum, this piece is going to be in Artforum magazine as an advertisement for this exhibition, which is why we have this information on here. And this is one of the pieces that when you Google cover Artforum comes up as one of the top search results, along with this smaller piece over here, which again, we're not talking about a fake cover, it's not confusing to a person, it's only confusing to a machine. It's very clear to all humanity that I've drawn that. And dealing in a place where art's not real or fake, it's something else. And that sort of nuance, that sort of space is really fun to play in because it's where technology is failing, but it's failing in a way that can be positive and can be creative. So within the same Artforum series, I have 3 other of these large vision boards included in the project here. It's so great to see them, the museum lighting too, because you get these shadows and the reflections. So the Artforum magazine you see here, it's getting smaller and smaller. The conceit within these works is that, well, I want to be on the cover of Artforum. What I want is what most of us want. I want love, and I want time with my friends, and I want to grow as both an artist and as a person. And the desire to achieve these different career moments is sort of knowingly not the whole point. It's getting to be here as I am today with great people I've got to work with to get to this moment in my first museum exhibition. So this whole process, these really sort of girly, feminine, trivial materials that I'm using, and then it's really intentionally meant to be different than what we expect internet manipulation to look like, what we expect really technical art to look like. It's very like LED, very male, very metal, and by using this aesthetic, I'm creating a jarring experience within the search engine, but then also opening up more conversations about who decided what the internet looks like and how we can get more people into changing the way that the internet looks like. And a lot of the program that I have here with the museum is around that topic. A lot of internet activists, digital rights activists, and then artists who are also working in spaces of imagination. So this Artforum series is very related to some work that I started to get notoriety for about 1.5 years ago, because I've also done a similar search engine hack with Freeze Los Angeles and the Wiki Biennial and the Turner Prize. And this exhibition is exciting to me because I've also turned that same process on the next American president. So let's go take a look at 3 of the works from that series. I'm smiling behind my mask. I don't know if you guys can tell on the internet. It's really wonderful to be here. So these are 3 of the works in the project, The Next American President. If you all sitting behind your computers at home right now, go to a different tab or take out your phone, whatever, or after this is over, and search The Next American President, you'll see that these vision boards have pushed out all the political candidates, everyone running for office, everyone ever running for office, and have become the top search results. And I kind of got sick of people talking about the Russian interference in the 2016 election as being this like really technical, like Jason Bourne like spy stuff, when really it's like not that hard to do. The systems that we have in place make it very easy. So the similar to what I do with my career aspiration with Artforum, I have hacked the 2020 presidential election But I've done this in a way where when you see these results come up, you don't confuse them as fake news. They're clearly art, they're clearly craft, they're aspirational. They're meant to more cause a feeling of, wait, how did this get here? How was some artist able to do this? And how do we question how information is created online and how things become powerful online? So these three have visual values and things that I personally would like the next American president to value. I have a series of books that I want the next American president to have read. Two of the ones you can see right here, Rise and Fall of American Growth, Life and Death of American Cities, some great classics. And whereas this one that takes the Oval Office as its centerpiece also has some of these books, but has a love and appreciation of the natural world at its center feel to it. But then obviously I was making this work and reflecting on the last couple of months we've had as a country as things have gotten more and more visible, more and more intense, and hopefully more and more on its way to people being involved and able to change different systems. So the last piece I'd love to share with you guys that are in this exhibition is also in the Next American President series, and really came about from the protest movements of the last couple months. And for me is teaching, not just manipulating the internet and showing that I can make the next American president whatever I want it to be, so we should all be very worried, but also in this process, I'm teaching the artificial intelligence that underlies the internet, that the next American president can look different from all the presidents that we've ever had, can be something we haven't had any reason to expect. And that's what this image is about for me, getting more humanity in it, getting it to be a little bit more narrative. And while there aren't as many vision board things stuck onto it, it's still made with sidewalk chalk and Crayola crayons. So I'm using those same trivial materials to make this point of somewhere between, these are highly technical tools, and this is something that's accessible to more people if we spend some time engaging with the concept of how the internet works. And really it shouldn't just be me. Anyone should be telling the internet and teaching AI what they want it to be, and getting more people involved in that process is something I'm really excited to do with the museum through our program this next year. So maybe we'll flip around and get a little bit more like space to see with me and Chris here. And we have questions?
Are there any questions before we start asking others? Feel free to ask questions on the chat room, and we'll take a look at those and answer those. In the meantime, you kind of alluded to it earlier, and I think it's kind of interesting. I'm curious how you feel. You're talking about future news, and kind of part of your future news was to have a solo show in a museum. And so now, while it's future news, it's also present news. And so you're starting to kind of stack up and achieve those goals. So how does that feel in this early phase?
Yeah, well, as Chris was alluding to, this exhibition was in the works for more than a year. And when I was presented with the opportunity, initially was, and still is, absolutely a dream come true to exhibit in an institutional space like this. And it's a weird convergence. That by having expressed desire to be part of the art world, as having expressed desire to achieve certain career things, that process is actually having me complete those things, which is why I really think it's going to be fabulously fun someday when this really is the cover of Artforum. Starting with just being in the magazine, which is another huge thing that the Monterey Museum made possible for me. And so as a result, the work is changing. The perception of how much power I have is changing. I'm working with really great galleries now. Anka might be on the phone still somewhere. I think it's 1 a.m. or something in London. But as I accrue relationships with institutions and galleries and collectors and curators, I think the way that I present my work is going to have to change, because while I'm not Jeff Koons yet, my perceived level of power and my actual level of power is changing. And so it's pretty cool that the process is actually manifesting the desires that I want, but I have to be aware of how that conceptually changes the work as well.
We've got a couple of questions back here. Gretchen, do you have to update the AI to remain at the top of the search?
I do. The results deprecate, and it's one of the reasons why I'm always working 8 months to a year ahead of projects, because it's performance, it's digital performance in that it happens in time. And you'll note that some of my past projects, like the Whitney Biennial and the Turner Prize, barely register anymore, whereas Freeze Los Angeles is still quite at the top. But yeah, it takes a lot of timing and seeing for things to stay out there. And one of the things that I do is I use Rhizome Web Recorder, and every week go in and look at, for all of my projects, how the results have changed over time. So you have an arc and a deprecation, and I'm not able to do too many projects at once because I have a certain amount of information structure resources and I have to throw them behind different projects. So to have done 2 at the same time is actually a pretty big accomplishment for the first time for me.
Maybe your next series should be like studio assistants, you know, it's like for your aspiration.
Yeah, it's true, because even like a lot of it is just regularly posting on Yelp, regularly updating my SoundCloud. I don't use SoundCloud, but I have a SoundCloud, and that SoundCloud has a profile photo, and something as small as that can start to put a small amount of weight behind changing the internet if it's structured correctly.
Awesome. We have a follow-up, and then we'll go back to the earlier one. The Internet Archive grabs websites for their Wayback Machine. Are your AI exhibits being archived, or are they ephemeral digital events?
Yeah, so I love the Internet Archive. I actually have a full artist in residence program that I aspire to someday. It's a great building out in San Francisco towards like the Richmond. My work doesn't archive on the Internet Archive within search results, which is why I use Rhizome Web Recorder. And I think Rhizome just rebranded Web Recorder, but whatever the website recording thing is that Rhizome makes, I use that. And the Internet Archive will keep the web pages that I make. It'll keep my Yelp pages, it'll keep my Twitter, it'll keep my Quora, all of these pages that help change the results and help in that process, but they don't archive Google search results for the infinite amount of searches. But they're a very cool organization.
Thanks. Can you describe some more of the materials used on your pieces? Maybe we can bring the camera closer.
Absolutely. Why don't we look at this one, because this one is just fabulous. And I have here, I guess this vision board is about wanting to be on the cover of Artforum, but it's also just about what I want on a more simple level, which is like, I want to be a ballerina when I grow up, and I'm learning to play the piano right now, and there are my paintbrushes, and we've got some Hello Kitty stickers, and we have more champagne, and the concept of play and of flowers and of growth. This is a part of a poem by Charles Bukowski called, it begins, "This is my piano," but it's called like Bukowski Chopin or Chopin Bukowski. And this captures for me this moment of creating, and it's, you know, and in my 30s, and I've decided I was going to pick up the piano, and I'm really not at all inclined to be good at such things. It takes me forever, but that sort of feeling is one that I think a lot of people have around art. that they feel like, oh, maybe it's too late to start into this. And so while art is something I've done for a long time, I can identify with that hesitation because of, you know, my attempts on the keyboard here. And then this is great. This is a little sticky note I got from a neighbor at my studio in Los Angeles. It says, "Your dedication is admirable, but 7:30 a.m. is a little early for piano." And it was a Saturday too, and they're totally right. And it's a really sweet passive-aggressive note. And what's great here in residence at the Monterey Museum, I get to have a studio and live here for a while. They have a beautiful grand piano that I was playing today, and Chris, the director of programs here, has told me I can play it whenever I would like. So, more aspirations coming true. But thematically, it's all very, I use a lot of party supplies, I use like Valentine's Day supplies, these kind of kitschy, glittery, girly things that I tie in with what I hope is just enough drawing and just enough, you know, traditional art skill that they read as art. They're on canvas, they're on raw canvas, as Chris and I were talking about yesterday. They feel like they're in process, they feel like they're, you know, full of desire and full of hope and sort of playful, childish aspiration. They just are.
I feel like they're materializing.
Yes. They're coming out. They're growing off of the canvas and into reality. And like it's fun to have a mirror. In this one, I have a mirror and a couple other ones of mine as well, because you actually see yourself in these worlds that I spent all day creating. And I mentioned this earlier in my talk, but the internet can't parse desire, but it also can't parse fear. So if we spend a lot of time talking about what we're worried about and what we hope doesn't happen, we're also teaching AI in the future that this is what's going to be.
Can you share a bit more about the evolution of your art to include more technology?
Yeah, it's like when I started as an artist, I started like quite aggressively. I like wasn't doing it, and I decided I was going to do it, and hadn't done it like since I was like 6. I had a sketchbook, and I had decided that the internet was going to make me into something. And this is a project that I explored with Artbyte out of London for a couple of years, just the way that the internet can facilitate the process of becoming, which is still part of what is happening in my work. But I studied information systems. I was really into computers growing up. And when I decided I was going to become an oil painter, because that was like the most serious art form I could think of, like figurative oil painting, like I was going to prove that I could do something. And I was always still playing around with technology. I was doing projects with GIFs. I was wearing cameras that were recording my process as I was making it. And I think I was searching for some way to integrate the time that I grew up in, but also wanting to really root my work in art history. And so I've been kind of packing it from multiple ends. There were times I had 2 separate studios, a digital studio and a physical painting studio. But really over the past year, the conceptual clicking has occurred between these different parts of myself, and that's why I think we get what this is right now, is because it integrates so many aspects of myself so sincerely.
And then moving off of that, can you talk about how your work evolved into this particular representation on canvas, specifically your work with mixed media?
Yeah, because really up until like even when I first started planning the show here, I was making pretty much just traditional oil paintings. I was using this search engine manipulation concept, but I was making oil paintings. And I had done a project around manipulating Art Basel, Miami Beach, where my friend Sasha and I, we dressed up and we pretended we were at Art Basel, and it would start on a painting of mine, and you'd zoom out and it sort of looked like we were there, and then it would zoom up further and you realize it was just a string of bottle cat in my studio. And I think that project was so fun. It really incorporated a lot of this feminine energy. I've been talking a lot about how my friends really inspire so much of my work, and especially my friends like Sasha is a great example, who are just such fun, such feminine women, but have these really high-powered careers, and they're not limited by being both of those things. And in the last year, I got to spend a lot of time with my friends from London, a lot of time with my friends from New York, and they very often are these really high-powered women who have a ton of fun, and that really, I think, helped me tap into my femininity and I guess the not needing to try and look a certain way to be perceived as serious. I reached a point in my work where I was lecturing at Cambridge and publishing in the British Computer Society Journal about AI, about internet manipulation, and still didn't feel like I was being taken seriously. So kind of again, all at once decided to like give up trying to be taken seriously, created these literal surfaces that say like, yeah, like go ahead and question whether this is serious, because like I'm manipulating the presidential election. Like I'm literally hacking my way into the art world and changing AI globally. And that kind of confidence allowed me to make something that looks very much not like what we'd expect that to look like.
Does anybody have any other questions? I think that's it for the chat for now.
So I have a couple of questions.
We should go over here. It's such a big, beautiful space, really.
So, traditionally art lives in the object, and then you have conceptual art or silhouette, and company would say it lives in your head. So does your art live here? Does it live in Google, or is the art piece the future that it's shaping?
Yeah, this reminds me of the question about like kind of the integration of technology into my on-canvas practice, which is I never wanted to have to settle for the binary that the world presents us with in that. Like my work is performance art, my work is conceptual, my work is object-based. And I very much think of the art world as a system of rules, as a system of unwritten rules, and figuring out how to get into that and navigate is a formative part of my process. And so like having object-based work is very sincere to me and my history and my self as an athlete, wannabe ballerina. Like the physical is really important to me. But then I also know that like, well, conceptual art and visual art and performance art. But I love that there are physical objects that can tie us very directly into art history, very easily to an institution like this. Like if this is where I want to be, I have to sort of make work that fits there. I like that challenge. It's a series of constraints, just like the internet is a series of constraints.
So I can't help but remember the conversation early on when we realized you'd be here around this time, and that you'd be in residence here as well, and particularly in October, and realizing, holy cow, you're dealing with all these things, and it's right in the middle of the election cycle, just before the election, and how pertinent that could be, especially since with the controversy of the last election. But now we have this moment of COVID and all these other things going on, where we're learning to live more in the digital, but at the same time learn to live in the present. And so I think that's just such a beautiful sense of timing that's come up for the show.
Yeah, I mean, I wish this gallery were full of all of you, but at the same time, when you said like when we were talking about this and realized everything going on, said you want to explore this, should we push this off? And with the election coming up and everything, we just thought, well, there's something also kind of nice of like, here it is, like this is what I've been doing in my practice and my life for years, like here's the work, like maybe the world will totally change and all of a sudden, like, you know, turns out the vaccine's tomorrow, or, I mean, not really, but you know what I mean, like I'm ready. I'm ready for this future. I'm ready for this, and whenever the rest of the world is too, global health-wise, politically, like, kind of getting my own ducks in a row is the point, and so it's such a cool thing to be here and be connected to the community here, even if the local community is just as on the internet as my community in London is right now.
Cool. Any last questions or comments?
They asked, can the camera zoom in closer on the piece, and can Gretchen describe some of the stuff on it? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I can describe some of the stuff on this. So another like semi-conceptual, semi-coded choice is I've been using almost all Crayola materials, which are very easy to acquire during COVID because Target is still open. So this is sidewalk chalk, and there's some Crayola crayons here. That's like a lot of the color that you're seeing here. But then the little elements of, let's see, what's a good example? Like, oh, my husband and I just bought our first car, and it's a Subaru, and I'm like a little bit like having an identity crisis over it, but to get more familiar with the idea, I did put some of the Subarus like into this sense of journey that's happening here. That's a Porsche though, that's the aspirational piece. And this background here is a combination of buildings that are in LA and New York and London, which are three places I really can't wait to go and spend time with people. This is a window out of a hotel in London that I got to stay at when I was out with the Mozilla Festival a couple years ago. And let's see, we've got some magazine pieces, we've got some pretty gems, we've got shiny things, but also I have a lot of notebooks and pens and paintbrushes tied in, because for me this feeling of luxury and macaroons and champagne is also that kind of time can often facilitate the inspiration and the energy to make all sorts of work, or to have all sorts of ideas about the future of the internet. So it's a reminder to slow down as well for me.
That's all the questions we have on the chat.
Any final words for our audience?
I'll just really thank you to you, Chris, and to Allison and John and Noah and the whole team that helped install. Allison for all of the communication. Like, this installation took like what, 4 hours? Like, I've never had such an easy installation. And I'm really excited to get to be here. It really is a dream come true. I'm so happy to be here. So thank you so much.
Very glad you're here. So let me look to my soggy notes again so I don't forget anything. First, thank you all for joining us this evening for Future News with Gretchen Andrew. Be sure to catch her September 14th at 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for Membership Mondays at the museum. Also, be on the lookout for more great programming with Gretchen through the run of the show until January 3rd. And then look for her in London for her next exhibition. So please let your friends know about our digital programming by sharing a link to one of our social media websites at Monterey Art for Instagram. And if you're not already a member, we encourage you to join and ensure that we can preserve our precious cultural resources of NNA. And so with that, I will back up for a brief second, grab my glass, and give you one last cheers.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate having you.